For me, the number one most important part of a video game is its story. Stories are what keep you going in games, and a good story can not only leave you with a beautiful ending that makes you contemplate about the game constantly, but it satisfies you and leaves you to interpret how the world continues in its newfound state of glory. For a while, I'd been searching for a game that had a story that could not only satisfy me, but also make me come back time and time again and let me infinitely think about it and interpret it in my own way. And the game that I found that was perfect for this was NieR Automata. NieR Automata is a masterpiece of a game, and it's the most philosophical game I've ever played. Not to mention, it's one of the most philosophical games of all time. NieR Automata is so deep, I don't even feel qualified to fully go into detail how much this game means. However, it's a game that allows for the player to freely interpret the game as they feel. And everyone has a different interpretation about the game, its themes, its endings, so on and so forth, and that's why I feel the need to share my thoughts about it since I just recently completed its true ending. Before I do though, this video does contain massive spoilers about the entirety and obviously the ending of NieR Automata. If you plan on playing it and beating it, please go beat the game first. It is one hell of a journey. Even if you're not sure if you'll play the game, I'd still recommend you to not watch this video and instead play the game or watch a playthrough, because this video will be so much more enjoyable if you know the plot. Alright, those are a lot of warnings, so without further ado, let's talk about it.
Everything that lives is designed to end. We are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death.
One of the basic themes that the game very directly informs you about is what it means to be human. The most basic premise of the game is the war between the android life forms, which are technological advancements built in the image of humans, versus the machine life forms, which were constructed by the aliens that eventually, in the time period that the game takes place in, learned to imitate past human behaviors. Androids and machines are faithful to fulfilling their purpose without question. The machine's purpose is to destroy their enemies, the androids. Nearing the end of the third playthrough, we learn that the collective intelligence of all of the machines are the Red Girls. The Red Girls try to prolong the war for as long as they can, because if they destroy the androids and fulfill their goal as quickly as possible, they have no purpose for living. This causes the machines to respond in turn and adopt the way of the past civilization on Earth, which is us, humans. What's to note here is that both sides for thousands of years have been programmed to constantly go back and forth in this war, seemingly with no meaning. Both the androids and machines were programmed to wish to eradicate the other species with no conscious reason as to why, which therefore gives them the lack of free will. Simply put, their only purpose is to kill. However, in the early parts of the third playthrough, we learn that every Yorha unit's black box, which is sort of a materialized version of their consciousness, is all made from machine cores. It's at this point where I realized maybe machines and androids aren't so different after all. So, in reality, both machines and androids go through the exact same hardships as one another. In fact, almost every character you meet in the game has gone through the same suffering as one another. Eve, the antagonist of the first and second playthroughs, loses his only brother Adam, and it causes him to go mad and attempt to wipe out the androids. Simone, a machine obsessed with beauty, tries to show her affection for another machine, Jean-Paul, yet she struggles with this because he's uninterested in romance and refuses to pay attention to her. She therefore reacts to her own failure by going mad, and even eating other machines in order to become more beautiful. And most notably is Pascal, who's a pacifist machine whose village later gets attacked. Because of this, he flees to the abandoned factory with the village children. And after he fights back against the enemy machines, he returns to the insides of the factory where he finds out the village children have killed themselves. After realizing that the children killed themselves out of fear, Pascal hates himself for teaching them the concept of fear, and he proceeds to ask A2 to either wipe his memory,
and if not, then I need you to kill me.
This is arguably one of the hardest choices in the game. But why is that? It's because you relate to Pascal's human emotions. And this doesn't apply to just Pascal. Every one of these characters goes through hardship, and ultimately responds to it in a way very reminiscent of humans, because after all, we humans tend to respond to our struggles with either acts of rampage or grief. And expanding upon this, it's worth mentioning that a lot of these characters are named off of famous philosophers, with tons of philosophy being referenced throughout the game. There's even a point in the game prior to the destruction of Pascal's village where Pascal reads a philosophy book and mentions Friedrich Nietzsche, a German philosopher.
It seems this Nietzsche was quite the profound thinker.
But enough of that. I know little to nothing about philosophy, especially when compared to the amount of it put in NieR Automata. Since a lot of these machines are capable of displaying the same level of emotions as humans, what does that mean for the androids? After all, machines and androids can be seen as equals in a way, due to their shared struggles. For the androids, the only thing blocking their path to enlightenment and becoming human is the truth. Yorha, which is the military force of the androids, was supposedly created to reclaim the Earth from the machines and the aliens and win it back for the glory of mankind. However, this isn't exactly the truth. Humanity was actually long extinct before the aliens had arrived on Earth, and Yorha's only purpose was to protect everyone from this truth. Every single one of Yorha's units is blindly and falsely fighting for a war that no longer has any meaning. Yoko Taro, NieR Automata's director, has even stated that Yorha units wear their blindfold like visors because they're blinded from the truth, while other units like Operator 2-0 wear masks or veils over their mouths as a symbol that they cannot speak of the truth. And in order to make sure no one found out about the truth, every Yorha unit was designed to be killed eventually. As part of this plan, it's also revealed that 2B isn't at all 2B. Her actual designated model is 2E. Type E models were built to execute other Yorha units. Yorha is aware that 9S is a high-end and smart model, and in his specific case, the only way to prevent him from learning about the truth is to assign 2B to kill him. 2B's secret mission throughout the entire game is to kill 9S. That is, in the first and second playthroughs. Once the Yorha kills off all their own units, they would just restart the cycle. This is the endless cycle of life and death throughout NieR Automata, with nothing destined to change. Neither the machines, the ones who are well aware they're destined to keep repeating humanity's mistakes, as well as the androids, the ones who will keep fighting for no inherent reason, will ever change. Because of this cycle, it also means that 2B has to kill 9S over and over again, without any end to the cycle in sight. And every time he dies, his memory is wiped, while 2B unfortunately keeps hers. This is a hardship that 2B has to undergo, just like Eve, Simone, and Pascal. And at the end of the first and second playthrough, when 2B kills 9S once more, she cries.
It always ends like this.
This cycle is what makes 2B human. But this begs the question, what's so good about being human? Human or not, everything we've discussed so far tackles the idea of never-ending pain and tragedy, which makes sense. After all, that is what life is all about. But life isn't 100% suffering. Even in a forever cycle of pain and agony, the one thing that can break it is empathy. Every time that a character has shown empathy or kindness throughout the story, it breaks their constant stream of suffering. For example, if it weren't for A2 to kill 2B, 2B would have died alone, and she would have met a terrible demise. Yet she's thankful for A2, because 2B leaves it up to her to protect 9S. And as 2B dies, she says,
Nights.
as she dies with a smile. However, the opposite also applies. The lack of empathy simply leads to more suffering. In this same moment, 9S loses his empathetic traits as he watches 2B die, which leads him to even worse pain than before. Empathy is a major value of the game, and the game even drives forth this concept one last time in its final moments. In Ending E, the true ending, the player has to complete a bullet hell-like minigame similar to 9S's hacking sequences. This minigame is extremely hard and is seemingly impossible, much like the struggles throughout the actual narrative. This one tiny minigame is reminiscent of the entire game. All of the emotional force in the story of the game finally builds up to this point, where you, yourself, the player, undergo the exact same struggles as the characters. As well as this, the game also straight up asks you if you want to give up or admit that this world is meaningless. Yet you deny that, much like the characters throughout the plot. And ultimately, you maintain your own cycle of life and death. Eventually, if you're connected to the game's online network, you will receive help from other actual real-life players that make the minigame significantly easier. And the only reason you ever receive help in this minigame is because other real people feel empathy. This is the exact same journey the entire story takes in the past 30 or more hours of gameplay. And upon beating the minigame, the final cutscene of the game will play. And in it, it shows the pods reconstructing 2B, 9S, and A2. But one thing remains. The question of whether or not the cycle repeats after this is up to the player to interpret. And after all,
A future is not given to you. It is something you must take for yourself.
My opinion is that the cycle never ends until the query you get afterwards. After the cutscene, the game asks you a very important question. If you wish to, you can become one of the helpers in the final minigame and help to save another real human suffering.
However, in exchange, you will lose all of your save data.
If you don't, you simply get to return to the title screen. But yet, it doesn't feel complete here. NieR Automata is also known for breaking the fourth wall and integrating its storytelling with its gameplay extremely well. Therefore, it makes sense that the true story and ending of the game would have very close ties to your choice in this final moment. Other games use gameplay as a mechanism to tell a pre-made story, whereas NieR Automata feels like it uses its interactive ability to keep on writing its predestined story. If you don't delete your save data and load back into the game, aren't you just repeating this cycle once more? It'll only end because of this choice. When you load back into the game, that's all. You simply load back into the game. You're not given a sense that anything's changed because you haven't shown empathy. And the only way the endless cycle of life ever ends
And you are truly, truly sure about this?
is when it's all gone.